Imagine this. A passenger airplane is retired after 20 or 25 years, but that same airplane can keep flying for another 10, 15, or even 20 more years as a cargo plane. And this is where the big question comes in. How is it possible that an airplane, which is already considered old for passenger service, suddenly gets a second life transporting cargo all around the world? Could it be that cargo planes are stronger, or do they simply use them less? Well, the answer is much more interesting than it seems. And here comes the curious part, because in aviation, lasting longer doesn't mean what most people think. First, you have to understand something key. When people talk about the life of an airplane, engineers don't measure it only in years. In reality, they use 4 different counters. The first is the most obvious: calendar years, which simply means how much time has passed since the airplane left the factory. But there is another counter that is much more important: flight hours, and another one that is even more critical: flight cycles. A cycle basically equals 1 takeoff and 1 landing. And this is important because each cycle involves something the public almost never considers: the pressurization of the fuselage. Every time an airplane takes off, the fuselage becomes pressurized, and when it lands, it depressurizes. That process creates structural stress on the aircraft. Over time, that stress can produce metal fatigue. That's why, in many cases, cycles age an airplane faster than flight hours. And here is where the first big difference appears. Passenger airplanes fly much more. For example, operational data shows something interesting. A passenger airplane flies on average 9.8 hours per day, while many cargo planes fly around 4.5 hours per day. But the most impressive part isn't the hours, it's the cycles per year. A passenger airplane can perform approximately 1,434 takeoffs and landings per year, while a cargo plane performs about 607 cycles annually, which means less than half. And as we already saw, cycles are one of the factors that wear down the aircraft structure the most, so even if both airplanes are the same age, the passenger aircraft usually ages faster structurally. Now here's where it gets good, because the secret behind the longevity of cargo planes isn't only in how they fly, it's also in the economics of aviation. A passenger airplane has to meet many requirements. It needs to be fuel efficient, modern for passengers, quiet, and competitive against newer aircraft. If a model starts consuming too much fuel or its cabin becomes outdated, airlines retire it quickly. But in the cargo world, that doesn't matter as much, because cargo doesn't complain about onboard entertainment or the seats. The only thing that matters is how much it costs to transport each ton of goods. And this is where old airplanes become interesting, because many of them are already completely paid off. And that changes everything. When an airplane is already amortized, it can continue generating money even if it burns more fuel. That's why many airplanes that stop flying passengers end up being converted into cargo planes. This process is called P2F, passenger to freighter, which literally means passenger converted into freighter. During this conversion, important modifications are made. For example, a large side cargo door is installed, the aircraft floor is reinforced, container handling systems are added, and the windows are removed or sealed. All of this is certified through a process called STC, which is an official certificate for major aircraft modifications. And most importantly, the conversion doesn't mean the airplane becomes eternal. The structure still has very clear limits. Engineers establish something called LOV, limit of validity. This is basically a limit that indicates how far the aircraft's structural data remains valid for safe operation. For example, some models have approximate limits, such as the Boeing 737 with up to 75,000 flight cycles. The MD-11 has approximately 20,000 cycles, and the Boeing 747-400 around 20,000 cycles. This means that even the longest-lasting cargo planes have a technical ceiling, but if they fly fewer cycles per year, reaching that limit can take many decades, and that's not all. There is another factor that helps explain why cargo planes survive for such a long time: the global demand for cargo transportation. Worldwide air cargo traffic has grown approximately 4% annually on average, and projections indicate that over the next 20 years the global freighter fleet will continue increasing. In fact, the industry is expected to need more than 2,400 new cargo planes, many of them coming from passenger aircraft conversions. That means there is a huge market for giving used airplanes a second life. One of the most famous examples is the Boeing 747. This airplane stopped being used by many passenger airlines, but it continues to be one of the most important cargo aircraft in the world. The 747-400F, for example, can have a maximum takeoff weight close to 396 tons, and the gigantic 747-8F can reach approximately 447 tons of maximum takeoff weight. Thanks to its enormous cargo volume and its front nose door that can open upward, it became a true legend of cargo transportation. Another interesting case is the Boeing 737 converted into a cargo plane. The 737-800 BCF can transport approximately 24 tons of cargo. Many of these airplanes begin their lives transporting passengers for 15 or 20 years and then spend another 10 or 15 years transporting packages for logistics companies. But the story of the 737 as a freighter goes even deeper. The Boeing 737-800 BCF, which stands for Boeing Converted Freighter, is one of the most successful passenger-to-freighter programs in aviation history. During the conversion process, the aircraft undergoes major structural modifications. A large cargo door is installed on the left side of the fuselage so that pallets and containers can be loaded efficiently. The passenger seats are removed, the floor structure is reinforced to handle concentrated cargo loads, and a sophisticated cargo handling system with rollers and locks is installed to move containers inside the aircraft. In addition, many of the passenger-specific systems are modified or removed. The windows are sealed, the interior is simplified, and smoke detection and fire suppression systems are installed in the cargo compartments. These safety systems are essential because cargo aircraft often transport large quantities of packages and materials that must be monitored continuously during flight. What makes the 737-800 BCF especially attractive for logistics companies is its balance between capacity, efficiency, and operating cost. With the ability to carry around 24 tons of cargo and a range suitable for regional and medium-haul routes, it fits perfectly into the global delivery networks used by companies like express couriers and parcel carriers. These aircraft typically fly overnight routes, connecting regional sorting hubs where millions of packages are processed every day. Maintaining an old cargo plane is not cheap. In fact, maintenance costs are usually much higher. Operational data shows that average maintenance for passenger aircraft is around $727 per flight hour, while for cargo planes it can reach $2,509 per hour, which is more than 3 times more expensive. Part of this increase comes from the age of the aircraft. Older airplanes require more frequent inspections, more component replacements, and more structural monitoring. Engineers must regularly check for metal fatigue, corrosion, and structural wear, especially in areas that experience high stress such as the fuselage joints, wing roots, and landing gear structures. Cargo aircraft can also operate in harsher conditions than passenger planes. Many freighters fly multiple short nighttime segments, often landing at smaller regional airports. These operating patterns can place additional demands on maintenance teams, who must ensure that the aircraft remains safe and reliable despite its age. So why keep operating them? Because even with that higher maintenance cost, they can still generate profits if the airplane is already paid off and cargo demand is strong. When an aircraft no longer carries the financial burden of its original purchase price, airlines and cargo operators gain much more flexibility. Even if fuel consumption and maintenance costs are higher, the aircraft can still be economically viable if the revenue from transporting cargo remains strong. And the most interesting thing of all is that the perception that cargo planes last longer is sometimes an illusion. Because when we see a cargo plane that is 35 or 40 years old, we often forget something. That airplane already had a full previous life transporting passengers. First it flew passengers for 20 or 25 years, then it was stored, later converted into a cargo plane, and finally it flew another 10 or 20 years transporting goods. In many cases, aircraft even spend some time in storage before conversion. During that period, they are preserved in desert facilities where the dry climate helps prevent corrosion. Later, if the cargo market requires additional capacity, those stored aircraft can be brought back, refurbished, and converted into freighters. In other words, what we are seeing is the sum of 2 different operational lives. cargo planes do not last longer because they are magically more resistant. They last longer because they fly fewer cycles per year. They have a second economic life as cargo planes. And because the aviation industry has very strict structural maintenance systems, with inspection programs that include corrosion control, repair evaluations, deep structural inspections, and regulatory operating limits. These inspection programs are extremely detailed. Engineers perform scheduled structural checks, sometimes called heavy maintenance visits, where large sections of the aircraft are carefully examined. Panels are removed, internal structures are inspected, and any signs of damage, cracking, or corrosion are repaired before the airplane returns to service. All of that allows an airplane to keep flying long after it has left passenger service, and that's why it's not unusual to see cargo planes that surpass 35 or even 40 years of age. Airplanes that started carrying tourists and ended up transporting tons of packages all over the planet. These aircraft become part of a global logistics system that operates almost invisibly to most people. Every night, thousands of cargo flights connect cities, warehouses, and distribution centers, ensuring that packages, medical supplies, electronics, and countless other products arrive exactly where they are needed.